The knowledge of the creed, meaning this field, this discipline or science. Sheikh Samir said the shara', the sacred law, includes the knowledge of the creed, the knowledge of the rules for the slave's deeds, as well as other sciences. And when we say as well as other sciences, we have a footnote here. Some of those fields, some of those other sciences, religious sciences, they include the sciences of fiqh and usulul fiqh. Fiqh is the prophetic knowledge of the detailed rules of worships and dealings. Yani, fiqh is the knowledge of the practical rules that are obtained from their detailed sources. Fiqh is the knowledge of practical rules obtained from their detailed sources. Detailed sources means those ayahs of the Quran and hadiths of the Prophet that spell out exactly how to do the worship or to do the deed. That's fiqh. And in particular, fiqh refers to that knowledge according to a mujtahid. According to a mujtahid. As opposed to what's definitively mentioned in the Quran already or the Sunnah already. Like, there's 5 prayers throughout the day and the night. That's not something that a mujtahid came up with. It's not the ijtihad of a mujtahid. It's obligatory to fast the month of Ramadan. That's not the ijtihad of a mujtahid. And other matters like this. Marriage is permissible, for example. That's not the ijtihad of a mujtahid. Fiqh is the knowledge of practical rules according to the ijtihad of a mujtahid. And then there's another science called usul al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh. Usul means fundamentals, roots, origins. That's usul. We have written here principles of fiqh. Really, it means, though, governing rules. Usul al-fiqh is the knowledge of some governing rules of fiqh. We're going to say here, I'll read it. It says here, fiqh may be referred to as the sharia or the shara', the sacred law. When the rules are extracted from texts that detail those rules, that is called merely fiqh. Such as Allah saying, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. O those who have believed, if you stood to pray, wash your faces and hands to the elbows, wipe your heads, and wash your feet to the ankles. That's an example of a detailed source. The ayah spells out for us how to do wudu. Fiqh comes from detailed sources. And then the mujtahid will give you rules on top of that. So, for example, is the intention part of wudu? Doesn't say so in the ayah. So who can say so then, if it's not in the ayah, to say you have to make the intention for wudu? The mujtahid will say so. And that's what Ash-Shafi'i said. But that's not what Abu Hanifa said. According to Abu Hanifa, you don't need an intention for wudu. According to Abu Hanifa, the intention is sunnah. And what about keeping the order in wudu? The ayah doesn't say you have to keep the order. So who will say so? The mujtahid will say so, based on his proofs. Like Ash-Shafi'i, he said you have to keep the order. But Abu Hanifa said you don't have to keep the order. If you did wudu out of order, it will still be valid. So that's fiqh. Fiqh is the knowledge of practical rules that are derived from detailed sources according to the ijtihad of a mujtahid.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Yes.
So, are we saying that we only call it fiqh if it's elaborated on, like what's already mentioned in the nas is elaborated on by a mujtahid? But for example, what this ayah in itself, would we call that fiqh, or only when it's elaborated on and given more details to?
What I know is that it's fiqh when it's by ijtihad, not by explicit documentation.
Okay. All right. Barakallahu fikum.
Ameen wa fikum. And so, according to that, to say there are 5 prayers throughout the day and the night, that's not fiqh.
Okay, that makes it clear. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, just, okay.
Yani, they say fiqh means the fiqh of a mujtahid. Fiqh is not the science dealing with the general non-specific rules. That would be usulul fiqh, general non-specific rules. What does that mean? Non-specific rules are like what is proven by a command or a prohibition, and by statements that are inclusive, specific, general, etc. Meaning, when Allah says, for example, فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ فَاغْسِلُوا, wash. What is that? That's a command, an order. That's an order. Yani, meaning there's something general in there. There's something abstract in there. So very specifically, you're being commanded to wash, but remove the specification of washing and extract from that something less specific. What are you going to have? You're going to have a command. So then the command, what does that prove? A command proves an obligation, unless there's evidence to say otherwise. And a prohibition proves a sin, unless there's evidence to prove otherwise. Like, for example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Idha sa'alta fas'alillah." If you ask Allah. That's a command. Ask Allah. That's a command. So does this prove an obligation here? No. Because it's not haram for you to ask a creation for something. If you said to a creation, "Can you help me?" So that's asking. It's not haram. So when the Prophet said, "Idha sa'alta fas'alillah," if you ask, then ask Allah. There is a command here, but it doesn't prove an obligation. Or like when Allah says in the Quran, وَإِذَا حَلَلْتُمْ فَاصْطَادُوا. If you get out of the state of ihram, then hunt. Hunt. That's a command. Does that mean it's obligatory to hunt? No. Here, this gives permission. It means now it's permissible for you. Doesn't mean you have to. So all of what I'm talking about now, that's usulul fiqh. Usulul fiqh is the governing rules, how the mujtahid will deduce his judgments. Or when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La tusahib illa mu'mina," do not accompany but a believer. That's a prohibition linguistically. That's a prohibition. Don't do it. La tusahib illa mu'mina. Does that mean it's haram to hang with a kafir? No. Although prohibition originally proves a sin, but here prohibition doesn't prove a sin. So who does all that? Who says here this is a command for an obligation, and here this is a command for a recommendation, and here this is a command for permission? The mujtahid. These are the rules he uses. This is called usulul fiqh. Usulul fiqh is like a clockwork. And says here, and by statements which are inclusive or specific or general, etc. For example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in a hadith, وَكُلُّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ. Every newly invented thing is an innovation. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. And every innovation is misguidance. So that's general. The words are general here. Excuse me. But in another hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man sanna fil Islami sunnatan hasanatan falahu ajruha." Whoever starts a good sunnah in Islam will have its reward. So then this is specific. And by this specific hadith, we knew that the other hadith, the first one, needs to be limited. Even though the words are broad, every newly invented thing is an innovation and every innovation is misguidance. Those are broad words there because it says every. But the hadith is really not as broad as the words would make someone think, because there's another hadith that limits that. Whoever starts a good sunnah in Islam will have its reward. So that means there are good things that are new. So you have to put those together to come with the proper rule. This is usulul fiqh. Usulul fiqh is the knowledge of the non-specific rules, general rules. It's governing rules that the mujtahid will use to deduce the judgments properly. So those are some religious sciences, fiqh and usulul fiqh. And there are also Quranic sciences. There are several disciplines related to the Quran. Some are knowledge of its various recitations, knowledge of mushaf script, how to write a mushaf. If you wanted to write a mushaf, then there's some things you have to observe, as opposed to just writing an ayah, because you could write an ayah according to standard Arabic. But if you want to write an entire mushaf, you don't write it according to standard Arabic. You have to write it the way the companions wrote it. So then that's a knowledge in itself. That's why when you read in the mushaf and you see something there and you're like, what's that wow there? And you don't even say the wow, right? So you see zakah and salah, and there's a wow there that you don't say. Why there's a wow there? Because that's how the Sahaba wrote that. Why they wrote it like that, then there's a knowledge behind that. So the knowledge of a mushaf script and the knowledge of interpretation, the knowledge of tafsir of Quran, and the knowledge of proving the miraculous aspects of the Quran, yani the knowledge of proving that the Quran is a miracle. And you need some Arabic language for that. And the knowledge of tajweed, Quranic phonetics, yani how to recite the Quran properly. And there's hadith sciences, like narration, riwayah. This is the knowledge of narrating the sayings and doings of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with their different narrations. Riwayat, along with the verification of their vowels and their wordings, how different narrations have different wordings. Included under this science is the knowledge of hadith explanation, explaining the hadiths. And then you're going to learn about the hadith explanation books. Do either of you know any hadith book? Tell me a hadith book. Okay, 40 hadiths of An-Nawawi. Do you have one? Okay. How about a hadith book that's more fundamental? There's books of hadith called Ummahatul Kutub. That means the mother books. Like Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan of Abu Dawood, Sunan of At-Tirmidhi, Sunan of An-Nasa'i, Sunan of Ibn Majah. These 6 books, those are the most famous hadith books. Those 6: Al-Bukhari, Sahih al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, An-Nasa'i, At-Tirmidhi. Who did I miss there? Ibn Majah and
At-Tirmidhi.
At-Tirmidhi. I thought I said that. So Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. Those 6. And then there's so many books like the Musnad of Ahmed himself, the Muwatta of Malik, Imam Malik's hadith book, and many other books, like some books by Al-Bayhaqi, the Sunan of Al-Bayhaqi, and Musannaf of Al-Bayhaqi, and other hadith books. So then I was going to ask you a question after that. Can you tell me a hadith explanation book? So that's going to be like Fathul Bari. That's the explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari and others. So we won't go far there. But so that's knowledge of hadith narration. When you learn those books, basically, if someone learns, just like you learn 40 hadiths of the Nawawi, what did you do? You sat, someone taught that, and they read the first hadith to you. And then they might explain it too, and then read the second hadith to you. If they only read the book to you, only just the book, then they're just going to read the hadiths to you. The first hadith is this, the second hadith is this, the third hadith is this. That's narrating the hadiths. Explaining it, that's another thing. So narration includes the knowledge of narrating the sayings and doings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with their different narrations. And included under this is the knowledge of hadith explanation, explaining the hadith. So, for example, Wahhabi is going to bring you the hadith of the slave girl. And they're going to say to you, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ain Allah, where is Allah? And then he's going to tell you, and this hadith is narrated by Muslim. And he's going to say, and Sahih Muslim is the second most authentic hadith book of all. So if you have some knowledge here, you can say to him, but Muslim did not explain this hadith. He just narrated it. There's a difference between narrating the hadith and explaining the hadith. So included under this science is the knowledge of hadith explanation. That's different. Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, all these hadith books, for the most part, they're just narrating the hadith for you. They're documenting their hadiths. That's what their goal is. That's their main goal. Not explaining the hadiths. They might have some commentary here or there, but mostly they're just giving you the hadiths that they have. And then other scholars would come and explain those hadiths. And also included in this science is the knowledge of the narrated supplications, the ad'iyah, or the da'awat, and the formulas, the awrad, wirds. And also the knowledge of the Prophet's biography, alayhi salatu wassalam. And another hadith science is hadith terminology. That's called dirayatul hadith. Diraya, that diraya means knowledge. So you have hadith riwayah, that's hadith narration. And you have hadith diraya, that's hadith knowledge, the science. This is like usulul fiqh, but for hadiths. So just like I told you now, you have fiqh and you have usulul fiqh. Now you learn the difference between those. You also have hadith and you have usulul hadith. Usulul hadith, they don't usually call it that though. They usually call it diraya, or they call it mustalah, hadith terminology. The subject of this knowledge is the text and the chain, whether it's authentic, sahih, or it's hasan, fair, or it's da'if, weak. Don't we say this hadith is sahih, this hadith is da'if, this hadith is hasan. What does that mean? That goes back to hadith terminology. Or if the chain had few narrators or many narrators, and how was the hadith conveyed and how was it received? Like, did you hear it directly from your teacher so that you would say, I heard from him, or you would say, he told me, or she told me? Or do you have ijaza, permission, a license to narrate, so that you narrate something that you didn't hear, but you're allowed to do so? All of that falls under hadith terminology. That's another science. And then another religious science is Arabic language, lugha, language. The Arabic language, al-lughatul arabiyyah, it is the best of languages. And it is among the original languages revealed to Adam. Hence, it is not derived from Hebrew, another original language revealed to Adam, as the blasphemers say out of hatred and lies. They would say Arabic comes from Hebrew. That's not true. Both of them are original languages. But that old Arabic from way back then, that time's not like the Arabic now. I asked several sheikhs, who's more eloquent, the old Arabs at the time of the Prophet or the Arabs from Hud and Salih, the tribes of Ad and the tribes of Thamud? Who has more eloquent Arabic? They all said to me, had we heard the Arabic of those old tribes, we wouldn't even understand what they're saying. This is very old. Just like if someone speaks to you Old English, you're not going to understand a lot of what they say. Or depending on how old it is, you won't understand anything they say. It'll like sound like English. You're like, it sounds so familiar, but I have no idea what you're saying. You can find some things like that if you look on YouTube. Some people who, they claim that they are experts and they can talk in Old English, don't know what they are saying.
Sheikh, did they give
Yes.
you an answer though on who is more eloquent?
No, they didn't. That's what they always said. They would always say, if we heard them speaking Arabic, we wouldn't even understand them. Some scholars have counted up to 10 fields within the language, each so vast that one could spend his entire life mastering one. Among them are nahu, syntax or grammar. I think syntax is the best word for nahu. It is called ilmul arabiyyah, the knowledge of the Arabic language, because it is the most important of all of its sciences. And it is the bridge to all the different branches of the religious knowledge. This knowledge, the knowledge of nahu, is very important. This is the bridge to all sciences. Linguistically, nahu means intent or goal or target. According to the terminology, it is a set of rules by which the cases of the word endings are known. How does the word end? In a dhamma or fatha or kasra or what? The purpose of this knowledge is empowering the understanding of the Quran and the hadith. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How it ends in relation to other words in the sentence. So if you just say your name only with no other words around it, you just say Fatima and there's a sukoon there, because it's not in relation to anything else. So some scholars said it's suspended because it's not interacting with any other words. But when you put it with other words, so if you say Ja'at Fatima, you'd say Ja'at Fatima too. Fatima came. Dhamma. Or Ra'aytu Fatimata, I saw Fatima. So you put Fatha, for example. Because how it interacts. Is it the doer of the verb? Is it the receiver of the verb? That's Nahu. Mm.
For example, that comes after the term that is going to.
It could be the word before it or the word after it. Depends. Could be the word before it or after it. So when the person learns nahu, he's going to learn how that works. What word is affecting what word? What's going on there in the sentence? Sometimes it's the word after it that's affecting it. Sometimes the word before it that's affecting it. And this is the purpose of this knowledge, to understand the Quran and the Hadith. If a person learns Arabic, let him learn Arabic for this reason, so that he can understand the Quran and understand the Hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ. Not so that he can catch a cab or order a meal or something like that in Arabic. I saw a video on YouTube. I didn't watch the video. I just saw the thumbnail for it. It said, which dialect is the best one to learn Arabic? Like, should you learn how the Moroccans speak Arabic? Should you learn how the Syrians speak Arabic? You should learn authentic Fusha. That's the best thing, so that you can understand the Quran. Not just so you can speak some dialect of Arabic or Egyptian dialect or what. Also, another science in Arabic language is sarf, conjugation or inflection or morphology. Abu al-Fada'il Izzuddin Abdul Wahhab az-Zanjani, he said in defining this science, know that tasrif here means sarf. Tasrif linguistically means alteration, changing. In this field, it is altering an origin into various derivatives for the purpose of expressing meanings that would not take place but by such alteration. Meaning, you take a word like qawl, saying, that's a noun. So if you want to express the past tense, you'd say qala, he said. Or you want to express present tense, you'd say yaqulu, he says. Or if you want to command, you say qul, say. Or if you want to say, who's the one who said it? He's a qa'il. Or what's the thing that was said? It's maqul. So you change the form of the word into different forms. You change the word into different forms to achieve different meanings. That's called sarf or tasrif. Usually going to call it sarf. Hence, this knowledge deals with the structures of the words, not their syntactical relationships, not nahu. Nahu is the science that deals with how the words relate to each other in the sentence, how they're bouncing off of each other in the sentence. Sarf is the knowledge of the structure of the word itself. It is the second most important knowledge it is the second most important Arabic knowledge after nahu. A third one is called balagha. Balagha. Rhetoric or eloquence. All this, what I'm telling you, is so important. When you interact with some Muslims, you're going to find some Muslims, they know these things. So then you're going to be happy that you know that, mashallah. And imagine, for example, you are sisters. Imagine that you went somewhere where there's sisters meeting. And then some sister, she's talking about Muwatta of Malik, or she says, yeah, but in the Balagha, or like this. So then after you learn those things, you won't be like, what in the world is she even talking about? At least you have an idea now. What is this? Nahu, Sarf, all these things you're learning now, make sure you study them so that those things are engraved into your heart. What is balagha, rhetoric, or eloquence? Linguistically, balagha means arrival or reaching an end. Well, but by the way, why I made that example there, because you wouldn't be so surprised maybe if you found some brothers who know some stuff like that. Also, there's women who have knowledge too. There's plenty of women who have knowledge, but sometimes some sisters, they don't have some knowledge. So that's why I gave that example. You'll find this is women out there, they translate. There's translators out there. There's a woman, her name's Aisha something, I don't know. She translated a lot of books, mashallah. It means she studied a lot. So she knows nahu, she knows maybe balagha, stuff like that, mashallah. So
Is this what the Wahhabis teach, like in Philly? When they come to the Musalla, like I feel like they say a lot of these words.
They do say these words, and they might have some idea about them. But Wahhabis, a lot of times, they're going to be very empty people. They know words, and they don't know a lot of what's behind that. So they know how to front and like look like they have knowledge. They don't really know a lot of things. But there are Wahhabis who study, actually. MashaAllah. There are some Wahhabis, they have a considerable amount of knowledge, despite their deviance. You have to be careful with those. It happens sometimes. Some people would be deviant, but they learn. So they would learn Nahu and Sarf and Balagha. They would learn Hadith, science. They learn Mustalah and things like that. Usul al-Fiqh, for example. Those Wahhabis, they have delved into all those things. I heard recordings of Wahhabis explaining Al-Waraqat by Imam al-Haramain. That's an Usul al-Fiqh, Shafi'i school. And also, what's this Wahhabi? Which one is that? That's the one, I think he wants to be an Arabic language scholar. Which one is that? Not Fawzan. Who's that other Wahhabi who's famous? Anyway, so he explained so many books of Nahu. And I remember that I heard from Ustad Wafi. He said, the people who liken Allah to the creations, they don't become scholars of language. So then when I saw him translating so many, or not translating, explaining so many books of Nahu, I remembered what Ustad Wafi said. So I said, let me see how good he is. So opened it up. He's such an amateur. And he was saying stuff I never even heard of, like he's making it up. He doesn't know what to say. Subhanallah. Which one is that guy? I can't remember which one it is. His name's not coming to me now. Subhanallah.
Sheikh Arfan is saying, is it Abdul Hamid?
No, not Abdul Hamid.
Okay, no.
Famous Wahhabi. I don't know if Abdul Hamid is Wahhabi. He's Wahhabi?
He said he's not sure. He was just putting a name.
Okay. Abdul I hope he's not Wahhabi because he's very good. MashaAllah. No, not really. I don't think so. You will find your stuff on the internet, but not because they put it there themselves. These ones, some of them are dead already. The one I'm talking about, I think he passed away already. But their followers are on the internet and they upload their stuff. Subhanallah, Allah will for me not to remember his name right now. So yeah, balagha, linguistically, balagha means arrival or reaching an end. According to the terminology, balagha is making distant concepts accessible, refraining from being wordy and long-winded, thus using few terms to express vast meaning, while also using words that are easily pronounced and familiar, and with correct structure. So when the person uses balagha, what's he doing? He wants to say something that's very profound, but put it in very few words. Not only he's putting it in few words, the words he's using are common words, not like words that few people know. Easily known common words. And not just they are common words, they're even easy to say. Some people, like when they speak in English, if they're, let's say, have good education, higher education, they talk in a way that no one understands them. They bring many words that are just, if you're not educated, you're not even able to follow everything they say. And so in Arabic standards, that's not really balagha. That's not really eloquent because you don't know what he's saying. Just because he's using big words and that demonstrates that he has some extensive education, that's not the balagha. The balagha is when the person uses few words but his concepts are very profound, like enlightening and impressive to the mind. And the words he uses are known, common, easy words and easy to say, and he uses them correctly. Balagha was called as such because it makes the meaning reach the listener's heart, and thus he understands what was intended. Some scholars said that balagha is wisdom conveyed with brevity. Some said it is abundant knowledge in few expressions. The highest level of balagha is found in the Quran. The Quran is ablagh. It is the pinnacle of eloquence. And then the highest level of eloquence is found in the speech of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Learning this knowledge enables one to see the miracle of the Quran. The more you know balagha, the easier it's going to be for you to clarify how the Quran is a miracle. You could clarify that the Quran is a miracle by other ways, like if you know about matters of the unseen that the Quran speaks about, future prophecies that are mentioned in the Quran, or other things, matters of the unseen that are mentioned in the Quran. But if you know some Arabic and if you know balagha, then you can do more. You can show more how the Quran is a miracle. And amongst the religious sciences is the knowledge of inner purification, tasawwuf, and manners and merits, akhlaq and fada'il. The knowledge of inner purification and manners and merits. The knowledge of tasawwuf is misrepresented by some who claim Islam. And that misrepresentation is propagated by the non-Muslims who hate Islam, and they seek to defame it, and they wage war against it. They call it Islamic mysticism. Because of this misrepresentation, the Wahhabiyya have categorically denied the validity of tasawwuf. Ahlus Sunnah are in the middle. They're not deniers like the Wahhabiyya, and they're not defamers like people who believe in the absolute unity, al-wahda, al-mutlaqa, yani the pantheists. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Ya Kareem. You need to be careful from people who claim that they are Sufis. Especially if he claims he's a Sufi. Probably if someone is really, really, really a Sufi, he's not going to say, I'm a Sufi. Maybe he would, maybe if he's sincere and there was a benefit in him saying so, but likely he's not going to just come out and say he's a Sufi. But you would find people who really, their hearts are not detached from the world, and they would tell you, I'm a Sufi. He wouldn't really be a Sufi. Not because he told you he is, he wouldn't be, but because he's not really. But he thinks he is, and he says he is, and then you would find that those people, they talk with bad talk. They talk in riddles, and they say things that are ugly. Subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. I knew a person. He claimed he was a Sufi. He claimed that he went to learn from a Sufi. This was years ago. When I talked to him, he said kufr. I don't remember what he said, though. Something ugly. So I talked to him. He retracted that. MashaAllah. I talked to him years later. He retracted that. But then I saw him recently, and I heard him still saying things. So I said to myself, I think he's still like this. But he didn't say something that's explicit kufr, but he just squeezed in very strange things. He even said, subhanAllah, he said, I heard my sheikh say, so that means now I'm not going to be able to say he committed kufr because he's citing. He said, I heard my sheikh say that Abu Lahab came to the Prophet, and he said to the Prophet, you're ugly. And the Prophet said, yes. I was like, what? And then he said, then he went to Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr said, I never saw someone so beautiful. And so the Prophet said to him, when Abu Lahab saw me, he saw his own reflection. And when you saw me, you saw your own reflection. And he said, Allahu A'lam. It's like saying, Allah, maybe it's authentic, maybe it's not authentic. So I said, I think he's still on this So that's how those ones are. You have to be careful. You'd hear something and you might be confused, not sure if it's kufr or not. Or sometimes it would be kufr, and then they'll say to you, but he meant another meaning. So that's why remember the rule. If someone says explicit kufr, then you can't say he meant another meaning. It won't be that won't matter unless he doesn't know what the words mean. Like if someone said ana al-haq, he's saying I'm God. So that's kufr. And then someone might say, someone who claims to be a Sufi, he'd say, well, he meant another meaning. I was going to say to him, whatever else meaning he meant, does he know what does the words mean? Because it doesn't matter to us. That's kufr statement. If he doesn't know what the words mean, it's still kufr statement, but he escaped kufr because he doesn't know what he's saying. With those people, they know what they're saying, though, really. That's why they're saying those things, because that's something wrong with them. All those different deviant groups, each one has his own angle. So those fake Sufis, fraudulent Sufis, that's their angle. They talk with riddles, and they're like mystical ones. It's like Ziffy's Yoda or something like that.
What are they trying to achieve?
Well, usually those ones, they like attention, and they like money and women and food. So they basically just want to get from the people their attention, and if people give them gifts and stuff like that, then that's their goal. But as for tasawwuf, the real tasawwuf, it includes knowing the secrets of actions, whether worships or mundane actions like eating and marriage. It also includes knowledge of the praiseworthy traits like sincerity and relying on Allah, reliance on Allah. It has big secret, reliance on Allah has big secret in it. When you and you feel like you don't know, you can't see where or how, rely on Allah. Inshallah, Allah will make a way for you. And self-observation, it's praiseworthy. Self-observation. If you want to be very self-aware, don't worry about other people, worry about yourself. And the more you're going to be worried about other people, the less you're going to be self-aware. What are other people doing? The more you're worried about that, the less you're going to be self-aware. As well as the knowledge of destructive traits, destructive attributes, and knowledge of the sicknesses of the hearts, and sicknesses of the tongue and the organs, and of the dunya. Included is knowledge of the merits of the companions and their followers, and whoever followed them in goodness, and the conditions of the guiding sheikh. He's called murshid, the guiding sheikh. He's the type of sheikh who can guide you into piety. Not all the sheikhs can do that. Some sheikhs, they can guide you in knowledge. They can raise your education. But some sheikhs, they can guide you in righteousness. Some of those who can guide you in knowledge, they cannot guide you in righteousness. It's a talent that Allah gives to be able to do that. And also, this includes knowing the conditions of the murid. The murid is the one who seeks to benefit from the sheikh. And the knowledge of their relationship. And the knowledge of the Sufi tariqas, like Rifa'i tariqa and Qadiri tariqa, those dhikrs that they say. So those are some religious sciences there. MashaAllah. That's a digression. That's why that's all in a footnote. The book we're reading is a book for creed. So we don't want to talk about all those things, but that was put in the footnote, so we wanted to benefit there. So the shara, the sacred law, includes the knowledge of the creed and the knowledge of the rules for the deeds, for the slaves' deeds, as well as other sciences. It was also called Sharia. Sharia. The Shaykh said in the Bughya, the Sharia, the sacred law, is what Allah sanctioned for the prophets, the rules or laws that come down by revelation, and concerning deen, concerning religion. It means aqidah, conviction. The sciences of Tawheed and Aqidah are two names for the same field. You can call it the science of Tawheed, ilm al-Tawheed, or you can call it ilm al-Aqidah, the science of Aqidah. It's the knowledge of the creed. Its goal is the achievement of success in the earthly life and in the afterlife. And its evidence is the undisputable mental and textual references. Yani, the invincible mental and textual references. Those are the proofs for Aqidah. It is the highest and noblest knowledge because it has the highest and noblest subject. Yani, by learning the knowledge of creed, you will learn about Allah and His Messenger and His religion. So that's the noblest subject. So then this is the noblest science. It is the origin of every other religious knowledge. We didn't busy ourselves with all those religious sciences we just listed had it not been for our belief. So another name for this science is ilmul usul, the knowledge of the basics or the knowledge of the fundamentals. Or it's called usuluddin, the basics or fundamentals of the religion. Ibn Majah narrated from Jundub ibn Abdullah that he said, كنا مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن فتيان حزاورة. We were strong young men with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He means on the verge of puberty. فَتَعَلَّمْنَا الْإِيمَانَ قَبْلَ الْقُرْآنِ. And we learned belief before we learned the Quran. ثُمَّ تَعَلَّمْنَا الْقُرْآنَ فَازْدَدْنَا بِهِ إِيمَانًا. Then we learned the Quran, and by it our belief increased, our faith increased. And in Al-Itqan, As-Suyuti conveys that An-Nahas narrates with his chain back to Al-Qasim ibn Auf al-Bakri that he heard Ibn Umar, the companion, saying, لَقَدْ عِشْنَا بُرْهَةً مِّن دَهْرِنَا. By Allah, we lived for a time in our lives. وَإِنَّ أَحَدَنَا لَا يُؤْتَى الْإِيمَانَ قَبْلَ الْقُرْآنِ. When an individual among us would be given the belief before the Quran. Quickly here, I remember when I was a new Muslim and the first time I met a Wahhabi. Firstly, when I first became Muslim, I went and learned from AICP, and they taught me that you learn belief before you learn other things, and you learn obligatory knowledge before you learn other things. So that made sense. That's fine. Then I met my first Wahhabi, and he put doubts in my heart about AICP, like what happens to a lot of people. The goal of a lot of people is to make people doubt about AICP. So he put doubts in my heart about AICP, and I said, what is this? Have I been learning from some clowns or what? And I said to myself, I know this religion is the right religion, that's for sure. But have I been learning from the wrong people? So I went to do research. And so in my research, I went to different centers in the city. And I went to 43rd Street, 43rd and Walnut. So I said to them, do you have lessons? So the man said, you want to learn the Quran? So I said, He's supposed to ask me if I want to learn obligatory knowledge first. So that's what I told him. I said, you don't have to teach obligatory knowledge? So I didn't go there, mashallah. So anyway, what did Ibn Umar say? He said, لَقَدْ عِشْنَا بُرْهَةً مِّن دَهْرِنَا وَإِنَّ أَحَدَنَا لَا يُؤْتَى الْإِيمَانَ قَبْلَ الْقُرْآنِ. By Allah, we lived for a time in our lives when an individual among us would be given the belief before the Quran. وَتَنْزِلُ السُّورَةُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ. A surah would be revealed to Muhammad. فَنَتَعَلَّمُ حَلَالَهَا وَحَرَامَهَا. And we would learn its halal and its haram. وَمَا يَنْبَغِي أَنْ يُوقَفَ عِنْدَهُ مِنْهَا. And we would learn where there should be a stop when reciting. كَمَا تَتَعَلَّمُونَ أَنْتُمُ الْقُرْآنَ الْيَوْمِ. Just as you are learning the Quran today. وَلَقَدْ رَأَيْنَا الْيَوْمَ رِجَالًا يُؤْتَى أَحَدُهُمُ الْقُرْآنَ قَبْلَ الْإِيمَانِ فَيَقْرَأُ مَا بَيْنَ فَاتِحَتِهِ إِلَى خَاتِمَتِهِ ما يدري ما آمره ولا زاجره ولا ما ينبغي أن يوقف عنده منه. And by Allah, today we have seen men, an individual among them would be given the Quran before the belief, and he would recite what is between his Fatiha and the end of his recitation without knowing its orders, its prohibitions, and where it is necessary for him to stop when reciting. As Suyuti said, Al-Bayhaqi narrated this in his book As-Sunan. And he said that Ibn Umar's statement, "We lived for a time in our lives," proves that this is the consensus of the companions. This method. And this knowledge is also called Ilmul Kalam, the knowledge of Kalam. And here Kalam means theological rhetoric. As well as Ilmul Kalami was Sifat, the knowledge of Kalam and of the attributes of God, or merely Kalam. And the scholar of this field is a Mutakallim, theologian. Mutakallim just means speaker, though, linguistically. A Mutakallim is someone who speaks. But because this field is called Kalam, speech, so this is theology. Theology here is called Kalam, then the theologian was called Mutakallim. There are two sayings as to why this knowledge was named Kalam. It was called so because of the extensive talking with the many groups who are attributed to Islam, but who opposed the correct belief. That extensive talk was with the purpose of establishing the truth. And the other saying is that it was called Kalam because most of the debates in the old days between the people of the truth and those who opposed them were about the confirmation of the Kalam of Allah. Yani, they mostly debated about the speech of Allah, as will be explained in its own chapter if Allah willed. Technically, it is the method of confirming the creedal doctrines, yani confirming what we believe, by using the evidence, textual evidence, that means Quran and Hadiths, for those who agree with the validity of the sacred law. When someone claims to be a Muslim, and you can give him Quran and Hadiths. And mental arguments for those who disagree. So if someone's not a Muslim, then you're not necessarily going to give him ayat from the Quran or Hadiths of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. It was also said that the knowledge of Kalam is that field that discusses the names, attributes, and doings of God and the situations of creations, such as the angels, the prophets, the saints, the imams, the creation of the world, the resurrection, and the like, according to the religious fundamentals, not philosophy. Philosophy is something else. The philosophers have made the mind, the intellect, the basis and reference for all matters, without any consideration for that with which the prophets have come. Yani, for philosophers, the intellect is superior to a prophet. And they have their own talk referred to as ilahiyat. It's called here, translated here, philosophical theology. But maybe there is some other way to translate that. This systemization of the creed of the Prophet and his companions, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is called the Ash'ari creed. And any Maturidi is an Ash'ari. And any Ash'ari is a Maturidi. Yes. It means the creed is the same. When we say any Maturidi is an Ash'ari and any Ash'ari is a Maturidi, that's because their creed is the same. But their words are different. And their definitions are different. But they really believe the same thing. Yani, about the attributes of Allah, it's the same. Like, for example, Al-Aqidatun Nasafiyah, if you learned that booklet, that's Maturidi. We learned that. We teach that. Tahawi, the Aqidah of Al-Tahawi, that's basically Maturidi creed. even though he didn't take it from Maturidi, he took it from Abu Hanifa. But Maturidi takes from Abu Hanifa. It's basically Abu Hanifa. You have Abu Hanifa, he was a master theologian. He had his own madhab and creed. And then there came from his route a scholar who learned creed from his route and then documented that creed. His name is At-Tahawi. And then there was another scholar also who learned creed from his route and talked about the creed the way Abu Hanifa did. His name is Al-Maturidi. So it's the same. And we learn also other books of creed. It's Ash'ari creed, like Al-Farqu Bayn Al-Firaq, and like At-Tabsiru fi Din, and Al-Irshad by Imam Al-Haramain. Not that I learned them, but these are books that are Ash'ari books, and they're fine. They're valid to learn from in Aqidah. It's the same. Just some of their words are different, and some of their definitions are different. But when it comes to the attributes of Allah, the belief in the prophets, the belief in destiny, belief in angels, belief in afterlife, all that's the same. They might just define things differently. Maybe the Ash'aris, they say destiny means, and then they define it this way. The Maturidis would say destiny means, and they define it with different words, for example, and it means the same thing.